Laugh at the cringe, learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. Welcome to the podcast where honesty meets humor and the messy parts of life finally get their spotlight. I'm your host, Tranisha, and here we dive into dating, friendships, healing, and all the awkward in-betweens. Because here's the truth. Growth isn't always pretty, but it's always real. So let's get into it. Whether you care about football or not, you probably noticed something different this summer. One day you walked outside and something just felt different. There were jerseys everywhere, flags hanging from apartment balconies, restaurants packed at 9 a.m. in the morning, complete strangers hugging each other after goals, and suddenly every city hosting matches felt just a little more international. It felt like America had opened its front door and the whole world decided to stop by. Welcome to Hot Takes and Tan Lines, a Cringe and Crumble summer miniseries. I'm your host, Tranisha, and today we're talking about the World Cup effect, the summer the world came to America. But before we get into it, let me define something. What is the World Cup effect? It is what happens when millions of people from different countries stopped acting like strangers. Cities become neighborhoods, airports become meeting places, flags become conversation starters, and even restaurants become unofficial embassies. And for one summer, the world feels a little smaller. Now, if you don't know, let me put you on, because soccer, also known as football, football if you're feeling fancy, is currently putting on one of the biggest sporting events in the world right here in our backyard. And before anyone comes for me in the comments, for the remainder of this episode, I would like for it to be known that I will be respectfully referring to soccer by its government name of football. You're very much welcome, okay? So traditionally, the Men's FIFA World Cup featured 32 nations. This year, it expanded to 48. That means more countries, more cultures, more stories, more fans, and more first-time appearances, which for many nations is really great because they're getting an opportunity to experience the world's biggest sporting event. The expansion gives more regions around the world a chance to participate and compete on the biggest stage. And adding 16 countries didn't eliminate heartbreak, it simply redistributed opportunity. We saw nations making history, countries returning after decades, and somehow even the four-time champions, Italy, were still watching from home. But somewhere along the way, the World Cup stopped feeling like just another tournament. It started feeling like one of the biggest cultural exchanges on Earth. The United States, Canada, and Mexico are hosting the 2026 World Cup, with the United States hosting the majority of the matches. And whether we realize it or not, America was on display, and millions of visitors arrived carrying suitcases and assumptions. Because for some, they expected Americans to be rude. Some thought nobody walked anywhere. Some also assumed our food would be terrible, and some believed Americans didn't care about football and that majority of them walked around armed. But let me just say this. A lot of Americans suddenly became lifelong football fans around mid-June. But what's fascinated me wasn't the football. It was what happened when expectations met reality. Because over and over again online, I kept seeing visitors say the same thing. The people were so much nicer than I expected. Everyone welcomed us, and strangers even talked to us. People wanted to know where we were from. Now, does these experiences mean this happened for everyone? And does it mean that we're perfect? Absolutely not. No country's perfect, because many visitors left with experiences that challenged their version of America they thought they knew. And yes, those yellow school buses are real, and the malls are gigantic, and portion size are really American size. But they also discovered something else, which were tailgates. Because yes, before American football games, also known as NFL games, we basically throw neighborhood cookouts in the parking lot, and they are a lot of fun. And if you've never been to one, you definitely have to participate in one. And yes, it is a whole production, but what they did do, they discovered volunteers giving up their time simply because they wanted visitors to have great experiences. Fans inviting complete strangers over to watch matches, neighborhoods embracing traveling supporters, yet kids trading scarves without speaking the same language, people cheering for countries they had absolutely no connection to simply because the atmosphere was contagious. Now, one of my favorite examples of this was a German football fan named Freddie. If you've been anywhere near TikTok or X this summer, you've probably seen him. He wasn't trying to become famous. He was just documenting his 6-week road trip across America while following his German team throughout the World Cup. What made his videos so entertaining wasn't the football itself. It was watching someone discover America with fresh eyes. He was genuinely excited about visiting Buc-ee's, Walmart, Waffle House at 1 o'clock in the morning, college football stadiums to NFL stadiums, and how can we forget the Southern hospitality? Actually, I think Salon showed him Magic City, and if you know, you know. And even driving through the greenback roads of Georgia had him in complete awe. Through his experiences, it made me realize something. Sometimes it takes an outsider to remind us what actually is special about where we live. We spend so much time complaining about the traffic, fast food and chain restaurants, football stadiums and malls, you name it. But meanwhile, someone else is seeing wonder in all of it. Freddie wasn't every visitor's experience, but he became a symbol of something a lot of people were feeling. The World Cup didn't just introduce the world to America, it reintroduced America to itself. And I think that's what made this year's tournament feel different. Summer already has a way of making people more spontaneous. People spend more time outside and the days are longer. Friends actually answer the group chat. Everyone looks for a reason to get together because of the summer energy. And then you add in the World Cup, and suddenly restaurants are opening early for breakfast matches and staying open late for evening kickoffs. You've got beer gardens packed wall to wall with families and laughter, music, and fans wearing every color imaginable. We're having house parties make a massive comeback, and I mean, we're outside. You've got the rooftop parties that are taking place. You got parks filled with pickup games inspired by whatever match people had just watched. You got friends who couldn't explain the offside rule 3 weeks ago, but are suddenly debating the VAR decisions like they've been analysts their entire lives. And speaking of VAR, we need to have a conversation about some of these calls because I don't even think they understand what offside means either. But anyway, we have people waking up at 6 in the morning. You've got drinking before breakfast, and somehow nobody's judging us because football's on. Vacation itineraries suddenly revolve around kickoff times. You know, everyone's asking each other, can we leave after the match? How far is the nearest watch party? Does the restaurant have the game on? And maybe my favorite part is, though, people who have never watched football before suddenly have a favorite country. Maybe it's because of the jersey. Maybe it's because they fell in love with the fans. Or maybe it's because they visited that country once. Or maybe they just wanted someone to root for because at the end of the day, I don't think the summer was really about football. I think it was about joy. In the world where we are constantly bombarded with headlines and arguments, division, and stress, the World Cup gave people permission to celebrate. We had permission to dance, to sing, to meet strangers, to learn about another culture, to cheer for people they've never met. And maybe that's the real World Cup effect. Not just 90 minutes on a pitch, but millions of people discovering that curiosity travels further than assumption. And that for one unforgettable summer, the world didn't feel quite so far apart. And maybe that's why people call it the beautiful game. I've always wondered why football is called the beautiful game. At first, I thought it was because of the goals, the skills, or even the atmosphere, but I think I finally understand. It's beautiful because for 90 minutes, the world agrees on one thing. We all understand joy. We all understand heartbreak. We all understand hope. And you don't need to speak Portuguese to celebrate a goal. You don't need to speak Japanese to applaud an incredible save. You also don't need to speak Spanish to understand the tears after a loss. And football becomes a language that everyone somehow understands. So, for every 4 years, we spend a month arguing with offside calls, screaming at televisions, wearing jerseys from countries we've never visited, and hugging strangers after goals. For a little while, borders still exist, but they don't seem to matter quite as much. The World Cup reminds us that culture is meant to be shared. Food is meant to be shared. Music is also shared along with language. And of course, celebration is shared. So maybe that's why the tournament feels so different from every other sporting event. It's not really about who wins. It's about what happens when the entire world decides to spend a summer together. And maybe for one summer, the World Cup reminded us that the world is big, but people are not as far apart as we think. Laugh at the cringe, learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. Until next time.